we're doing this. So today we're talking about the ideal fuel for a rocket, correct?
Yeah, at least, yes.
We're going to debate whether you should use oxygen or hydrogen gas or
certain
methane.
formulas, right?
Yeah.
Ratios,
or a can of C4.
Or a can of C4. Seems pretty good to me.
That's a really good point. So before we started, Nelson, you were drinking. You're always having a different energy drink. What's up with C4? That sounds intense.
So C4, not sponsored yet.
I was going to say we should get them to sponsor.
Right, for sure.
Well, he hasn't said anything positive yet, so
it's sugar-free,
sure
though, so that's good. Tastes
No.
delicious.
We won't accept a sponsor. That's not good. What's in it that makes it sweet? That's whatever it is worse than sugar.
You have no idea. It's 0 artificial colors, 0 sugar, and 200 milligrams of caffeine.
It's horrible. Unless it's sweetened with stevia. Look on the back. What kind of fake sugars are in there? You are literally drinking poison. C4, don't contact us. You can't sponsor us. Unless you use stevia, then maybe.
Apparently, there's like, I don't know, arsenic or cyanide in Celsius, which
cyanide.
Is like,
there's cyanide.
One of those. It was a highly poisonous compound, or element, either one. And so I stopped drinking Celsius for that reason. But yeah, I don't know what they use. This carbonated water, carnosine beta-alanine, which I have no idea what that is. Malic acid, beta power, betaine.
Here's what we're going to do. For the next show, you need to download Yuka, the app, and I recommend everyone download it. And
sucralose.
You scan the back of that, and it'll tell you what's in it, how risky the stuff is, high risk, medium risk, low risk, and see what your report is. 0 to 100, it scores it. Yuka, we would take a sponsorship from them. They're helping make America healthy.
Like YUKA?
I think it's YUCCA. My wife's got it on her phone, but it's amazing.
My sister-in-law uses something like that, and I wonder if it's the same thing.
Let's have her on the show.
Just to talk about the app?
Yes. All right. Maybe we should get into it. So we're talking dogs, right? Dog attacks, off-leash dogs, dangerous dogs.
That we are.
I think what we're really talking is how to survive a dog attack. Isn't that what it really is?
Yeah, I think we should add on, though, at some point we should talk about what to do when it's not truly attacking, because on our video on YouTube of how to survive a dog attack, we get comments where people are like, this is bad advice because the dog might attack you if you do that. And we're like, yeah, like this is when it's already attacking you, but like read the title. Like this is how to survive, not how to start a dog fight. This is not how to attack a dog. This is how to survive a dog attack when a dog has chosen to attack you. But we should give advice for what to do if it hasn't started an attack. You're just scared because it's an off-leash dog eyeballing you.
The other thing
you
with
want to start with techniques to avoid being attacked, it sounds like.
Yeah, like you got a just big, scary dog approaching you. You're in a dark alley, and you're trying to get rid of your wallet, and you're like, just take my money, buddy. And it doesn't care.
It's raining. Yeah,
right.
The whole situation.
Yep.
Now, the other thing that I hate that people, I don't know if it's they're overlooking or never thought about it or what, but whenever they say, hey, that's really bad advice because the dog could do this, and they're saying, hey, that only works 80% of the time.
Yeah.
So because this doesn't work 20% of the time, you're an idiot. Like, what? 80% of the time you're getting away like unscathed. This seems like great advice.
Yeah, I agree. When you look at that video, the comments crack me up. We talked about it in the past. Like a year ago, this video went like viral on Facebook, and everyone was like, shoot the dog, break its neck, like insane comments. But YouTube, it's like continued to crank on YouTube since then, and people don't make the same comments. No one's talking about jujitsu, breaking the dog's neck. Like it's very normal comments, but people are also really fixated on how I say to hold your foot, which I guess we'll get into at some point. And people can't can't get past that sometimes. So I think we'll talk about foot placement.
So shooting the dog is no longer the most popular comment because that was all over the place.
Very rarely does someone on YouTube suggest shooting the dog. On Facebook, it was like people were posting pictures of guns and stuff. It was nuts.
So what is a normal comment then on that video?
They were like, just let it bite your arm and then like jump behind it, and then like as it's biting your arm, like shove your arm down its throat, and then like just insane stuff.
I remember that one. Yeah.
That guy was on meth, guaranteed.
He played a lot of Mortal Kombat, right? He was like, this is coming with me now.
Finishing move. So how do we want to structure this? Are we just going to structure it where we'll start with dog attack and what we would do in that moment, and then we'll talk about how to maybe prevent from getting attacked if a dog's just sketching you out a little bit?
So you're going to like paint the picture and then we walk it through, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, we could start big picture. Do you want to give any big picture advice first, Nelson? Wlos, you want me to? We could just start there and see where it takes us.
I mean, the biggest picture in any of these types of situations, right, is situational awareness and avoidance. So a lot of the times, whether I have a dog or not, maybe it's just being the kids, but if I hear someone yelling out a name multiple times, I'm starting to look around already. I want to know, are you looking for a kid? Are you looking for a dog? Is there a dog on the loose? Because I'm getting out of here. I'm probably not going to try and help you catch your dog. I'm probably getting the heck out of here as quickly as I can.
Are you more worried if they're yelling Thor or something like that?
You know what it is? It's Gotti. If they yell out Gotti, I'm probably
okay. What about Bane? Bane would freak me out if someone was screaming, Bane, no! That'd make me pretty nervous.
So, but you know how often I've trained two, and I distinctly remember both of them being named Bane, because I always ask the owner of like, well, is it Batman or is it Star Wars? And then everyone's like, I don't know anything about Star Wars. I thought it was Batman. And I was like, my bad.
I don't think there's a Bane from Star Wars. I think that's why people are confused.
Have you seen sad that I have no idea what you guys
it's not
are
in the movie
right now?
What?
Oh,
it's not in the movie. What is it in?
It's in the lore. It's in the world that he created. Man, I can never remember what his name is. So George Lucas. So it's in the world of George Lucas. Bane was one of the bad guys. He was a Sith Lord. And he created the rule of two, right? So there's a master and then an apprentice.
I mean, we all know the rule of two, but
which was in the movies. To be fair.
Are you sure this isn't? This sounds like fan fiction.
No, I'm pretty sure that this is lore. This is what do they call that?
Canon?
Canon. That's what it is. Yep. Good. You were right on there. Good.
Thank you. And I'm done for the day. I'm going to log off. Nailed it.
Boom.
Okay. So situational awareness, head on a swivel. I like that. What else?
I think it goes with one of the things I had on there with situational awareness. If there's areas that you know that you've seen dogs that look bad in the past, you could simply avoid those on your walk. So, neighbors' houses where you've seen a dog constantly that looks like it wants to get out and kill you, probably don't walk by there anymore.
That's fair, actually.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll give my big picture, and I think this will be the theme of everything, is if a dog decides to attack you, your main response needs to be strength and intimidation. And everything we're going to talk about, and the caveat is like, this is if a dog has decided to attack you, don't try to reason with it. Certainly don't try to run. You need to think about scaring the animal off. And it's understanding that dogs who decide to attack aren't going to be like, all right, well, he seems nice, so I guess I'm not going to attack him now. Don't lay down and play dead. This is not a grizzly bear. All of those are terrible ideas. If you lay down and play dead, that dog's probably just going to bite your throat. If the dog decided to attack, strength is the only option at that point. Any pushback from you guys?
Not from your point. My only pushback is he's like, go big picture. Like, what do you guys think of big picture? And then zones in and like,
that's big picture.
I'd never run away.
I haven't given any advice yet besides try to intimidate them, right? I think that's real big picture, super big.
I think you're 1,000% correct, right? Intimidation. A lot of the times, if you're intimidating, you don't have to be strong. And then if it comes down to it, where there's a physical altercation, yes, you're not worried about, oh my goodness, I don't want to hurt this dog. I need to get away from this dog, and I need to get this dog to run away from me.
Mm-hmm. And, we should have maybe put like a caveat at the start of this, like a parental advisory, because I know a lot of people listen to these episodes like when they're driving with kids. be cautious maybe listening to this episode with kids, because we're going to talk about like the damage a dog can do, but also your response back is not super nice, right? It's not like PC friendly, like, well, dogs, everybody loves dogs, so here's the way you are nice to the dog to make it stop. Like, if the dog's attacking you, that's not an option. Just like if a human's attacking you, you can't be nice and reason with them to make them stop. So probably not appropriate for young kids to listen to the rest of this.
But I do think that that's critical, right? I do think that that's the mind frame. If you have any shot of getting out, unscathed or minimal damage, that's the mind frame to be in. I'm not doing this because I want to. I'm doing this because I have to.
Yeah. Should we talk for a minute about, I don't know if we've shared this in the podcast before, but I know you guys have both heard the story when that loose pit attacked Kara and I and Keenan Smalls years ago. I don't know if I have. Do you think I've shared that on this podcast? Either way, it's appropriate to this.
No.
So we were walking, my wife and I, with two dogs. We had a Mastiff and an American Bulldog. American Bulldog, very similar to a pit. This is not anti-pit bull, so don't even start that crap if you're like, why'd you have to say pit? Because it's true, it was a pit. Not anti-pit bull in the slightest, but we were walking and a loose pit bull charged us, and I saw it coming. And it was like that oh crap moment. Everything about his body language was not good. The dog was charging, tail up, targeting, like staring at us like this is clearly going to go bad. And so I gave, like, my wife and I each had one dog. I gave her the other dog, the one that I had, so she had two. And I stepped in front of them and I started screaming at the dog, and I went to it screaming. And that wasn't enough to deter the dog. The dog came in for an attack and like tried to go past me. And I kicked it hard. And, this is obviously not PC. Like, I didn't, try to, like, I didn't say sit. Like, that's not going to work. I was already screaming. And I kicked it fairly hard in the chest, and it sent the dog backwards. And then the dog did what any dog expert would kind of predict with a powerful dog, is it circled. And it looked for its next opening. So I circled with it. Like, it was circling, around. It was more interested in attacking our dogs than me. Which at that point was a stroke of luck because it really wanted past me versus it didn't want to grab my arm and attack, which was obviously much safer and it made it work out better. But it circled. So I circled. I kept my attention on it again the whole time. And every time it came in, I kicked it and screamed at it again. I was screaming loud the entire time. And I don't know how many times I had to kick this dog. And when I say kick, it's important how you do it. The dog, if it can, there's a good chance it's going to grab your foot if it's a tough dog. So this is the part in that video that people, I think, have trouble with, is explaining don't turn your foot sideways. And the reason is if your foot's turned sideways, so it's like horizontal with the ground, that means the dog can easily grab it in its mouth. And just kind of picture that. Also, the advice is don't kick with your toe. You can probably guess that's very easy for the dog to grab your toe. So I'd recommend foot kind of straight up and down, and kind of leading with the ball of your foot or your heel. Much harder for the dog would have to turn its head to get your foot in its mouth, which is much harder. And I kept kicking the dog, and I don't know how many times this happened. And finally, like, the dog and I were both tired, and like Karen, the dogs are behind me, and it like trotted off a little bit, and it wasn't a meter reader, but like a utility guy had stopped. And he's like, what's going on? And like, he had stopped and he was like walking up to us. And I was like, oh, this strange, this pit had just attacked us. And he's like, wait, what? And he like leaps in his car. He's like, get in. So Kara and the dogs like get in the meter readers or whatever, the utility guy's vehicle. And I took one of the leashes at that point, made a slip lead and followed the dog to try to catch it and was unsuccessful, and it just disappeared. But no question, like, to me, our dogs, the only reason we didn't have a horrific incident is because I used intimidation and strength. And when I say strength, I'm not like this super big, powerful person, but I'm bigger than the dog. I used intimidation and strength to scare the dog off. And what I would tell everyone listening as we get into this more, this is not me saying like, wow, I'm a very intimidating, strong person. Like, anybody can do this. I'm not a big guy. I'm not like a super trained fighter. So you don't have to be like this, man of steel to defend yourself, right? You just need to do something. So that's kind of what happened in that scenario, but I think we could spend a lot of time breaking it down, specifically what went on and what could have been better, what could have been worse. What do you guys think after hearing that?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, anybody can do it. There's no doubt about that. But I'll be honest with you. I mean, when I talk to women specifically, I'll tell them, like, hey, if you have a tenacious dog who likes to fight, you might be better off dropping the leash on your dog so that they can fight and you can, get away, get help, get, something along those lines. And to some degree, someone could come and say, hey, you're sacrificing your dog for your own safety. But also consequences are real, right? I mean, there are big enough dogs that can kill smaller people. There's no doubt about that, especially if I have kids with me. Yes, I would hope that my dog could fight off that dog long enough for me to get the kids away. But also there's the other side of that coin, right? Which is, think of how much more horrific that situation could have been had Keena and Smalls been allowed to make contact with that dog, right? It took a couple of kicks and got away relatively fine, right? It's not damaged. I'm sure you have a good kick on you, buddy, but, like nothing crazy happened. But one or two dogs could have died, between the three-way fight.
Yeah.
Serious situation.
Let's unpack a few things here. That's a really good point, right? That if the dog had been allowed to attack, I had a Mastiff mix and an American Bulldog. The three of them fighting, a dog would have died, right?
No
With
question.
a pit and those two dogs, like something horrific would have happened. If it had been allowed to attack me and had been attached to my arm, well, that dog would have ended up getting shot. The police would have come and the dog, I'd be incredibly injured and the dog would have been killed. So to your point there, I think anyone, if that was your pet, you'd probably be pretty happy the person kicked it a bunch of times and it stopped versus it got into a horrific dog fight or it got shot by the police because it was attached to somebody's arm.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. And your first point is a tough one about, do you let your dog fight? Because I have had a lot of clients ask me that over the years. And what I tell them is, if it was me and I could put the dog behind me or give it to someone else, I'm going to do everything I can to not let my dog fight. But
and I agree with that completely.
But without a doubt, if it was like my wife or my dog, I would choose my wife to not get injured. I think anyone who doesn't say that is pretty jacked up in the brain. And same with kids, right? 100%. If one of my kids was walking the dog and a strange, powerful breed attacked, I would much rather my kid drop the leash and get out of there. And that would really suck for the dog. But obviously children are more important than dogs. And if you don't think that, maybe you need a little therapy. Like when people say, oh, I don't know, I like dogs more than I like people.
Right, yeah.
Kind of weird.
We hear that a lot, right? So what about you, Vlos? What do you think about the whole situation?
I think it's always a rough call. I mean, I feel like, again, when it's me, I'd always put myself in between the attacking dog and my dogs. I feel like it's only happened to me a couple of times in this type of situation that's similar to what you're talking about, and it never actually led to a fight. So it's hard for me to say what I would do once it goes past that. I think, Covey, you hit on some of the most important parts when you talked about breaking it down, is get in between, be confident, yell and be loud. And doing those things, I think, generally ends up working and just stops the dog from advancing in a lot of cases.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we get more kind of granular on this, I would always suggest eye contact, lots of eye contact, staring down the dog. And we're going to get to later, what if the dog hasn't decided to attack? Then the advice is different. But lots of eye contact, staring, lots of yelling. That's your first line of defense, is screaming, and try to not be shrieking, but screaming in as tough of a voice as you can make, right? Mean, angry, and try anything. Try go home, get out of here, you can try lay down, leave it, whatever. To me, focus more on, your intensity. So I would recommend
I like to throw
something.
no out there too, because a lot of dogs do no.
Yep. And I would focus on
Jason,
screaming whatever makes you feel tougher, right? If you're trying to think of words and it's confusing you in the moment, that's not a good thing. So whatever you can scream in a kind of tough, angry fashion, I think is a lot better. We also recommend, or at least I recommend, hands up. That dog grabs your hand, that's going to be a huge problem. It's going to be, if it's a tough breed dog, it's going to be very hard to get your hand out of the mouth at that point. So I would keep hands up, and I would keep your hands in a fist. And we say this in the video, it's like you're not boxing the dog, but when you have a fist, it's a lot harder for them to grab a finger. You can lose a finger easier than you can imagine. So I would hands up, but I would not hands up and like a palm spread, like, hey, back up, buddy. I'd be hands up and, in a fist.
And think of the implication, right? Anytime as humans, if we go up and hands open, it's usually in a submissive way anyways, right? Which is exactly the opposite mind frame that we want you to be in anyways. So it's not about, hey, I have nothing in my hands, I'm not trying to be a threat. It is the exact opposite of, I am willing to fight and get the heck out of here, even if you're not willing to, right? I mean, even if you're hoping, because we all hope that it's not going to get there, but again, it's what will give you the confidence to portray that message. So a lot of swear words come out when a situation like that happens.
Other thing, I don't think we've said this yet, but don't run. You're not going to be faster than the dog. Now, I can actually give you a story where I sort of ran from a dog and it worked well, but generally speaking, don't run. You're not going to be faster than the dog. So unless you know that you can get to safety before that dog can reach you, don't run. And so we're talking right now about close-up scenarios.
Right.
If you see a strange dog charging you and it's like 50 yards away and you see a fence 10 feet away from you that you can sprint and jump over, you're like, yeah, do that. And no matter what, like if you can get, I think that's kind of obvious. If you can get to safety, go to safety for sure. And of course, if you can find an object to protect yourself with, even better. We get questions about pepper spray and, we can talk about that. But if you have a backpack on, I would swing that backpack off and defend yourself with it. If there's a garbage can next to you with a lid, yeah, grab that lid. Or maybe the whole garbage can if it's the right size. Like if you can find anything, there's an appropriate stick right next to you, or you happen to have a collapsible baton on your waist. I mean, there's a lot of things that would help, but a lot of times those aren't an option.
Covey, you seem like a collapsible baton.
Let's ask that question though, real quick. Do you recommend carrying a stick with you, like a walking stick, anywhere people go, and the bear spray or pepper spray too? Like, are these things people should really be considering doing just when they're going for a walk in their neighborhood?
Well, I can tell you, I never walked in that neighborhood again where the loose pit attacked us because there was no closure, right? Like, where is that dog? So we didn't walk in it again. There's just, we lived in the neighborhood and we just drove, like, I don't know, 2 minutes to a different neighborhood and walked there. It just wasn't worth it to me. But my point is, if you're in an area where you think it's likely that you're going to be attacked by a dog, either don't go there anymore, or I would for sure have something. So I don't make a habit of walking with a stick or, pepper spray or anything. But if it was my only option was to walk in an area that I thought the odds of an attacking dog were high, for sure I would bring something with.
Now, so I used to be iffy on pepper spray, bear spray, that whole kind of deal. I live in Illinois. It's always windy. And I was wondering, what is the possibility I burn myself instead of the dog and that kind of stuff, right? But apparently they're making gel instead of spray, which seems way better. Or, they have like the airsoft guns that shoot, the propellant. So that seems like a way better idea because at least you can get away. But even take the 50 yards and, a fence is 10 yards away. That requires situational awareness, right? To know that the dog is coming. And then same thing like what Wlos said is, if I've been to a neighborhood where I think that was going to happen, I'm not going back to that neighborhood, just like you did, Matt. So, both of those are your first line of defense, right? Is being aware of what's going on and then trying to avoid situations or areas, right, where stuff like that might be likely. But
for sure,
a collapsible baton, man, that could be cool.
And pepper spray, I think, is a great option to carry. And maybe we should play out what would happen if a dog attacks you and just kind of play out a couple scenarios so people can think. Because to your point, like the gel is, I've played with the gel. It is pretty awesome. It does hold its shape a lot better than the spray. If a dog has decided to attack you, unless you've got your head on a swivel, like Nelson suggested at the start, and you've got quick reactions,
You're competent, right?
There's a good chance you're not going to pull that out in time and have it ready to where like the dog's 10 feet away. You're more likely to be able to get it out in the times we'll talk about next, which is the dog is threatening and you think it might attack.
Sure.
But if that dog's coming in for the attack, this stuff happens so fast. Dogs are so quick. There's a good chance that I got lucky when the story I told earlier, because I saw the dog coming from a long way. It was just like beeline up the street. And I don't know if it saw our dogs and jumped a fence to come after them, but a lot of times you don't have that time. So there's a good chance the pepper spray is not going to be as much of a deterrent as hopefully a fight ender to give you a chance.
Sure.
So do you want to play through a couple options? I mean, I'll give you one, Nelson. Dog attacks you. It runs up. You scream. And
what kind of dog?
You what?
What kind of dog?
Let's go American Bulldog.
Okay.
Scott type. We're
Scott
talking
type.
like
Okay.
85 pounds of muscle. And you kick a few times. I guess first, this is like choose your own story or whatever.
It really is. Yeah.
Do you kick? What do you do?
Okay. So Scott type comes in. I have a dog with me. I'm assuming I'm walking.
No, you're dogless. Let's do dogless.
Just me.
Yep.
Oh yeah. So if I see that dog coming, I'm yelling, I'm swearing, I'm squaring up, and I'm starting to approach. Absolutely, my first move is to start kicking as soon as it comes into range.
So this dog's fast. You kick it a couple times, and it jumps up and grabs a hold of your arm.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do now?
What I do now is I am going to be kneeing that chest or punching in the head just to get that thing to let go as much as possible. But also, I guess a lot of that really comes down to if it's got a collar. If it has a normal collar, I'm twisting that collar and trying to choke it out as quickly as possible. There's a very, very good chance that I can choke it out as opposed to winning a fight. Like, let's be honest, an 80-pound, really, really fast Scots type American Bulldog probably defeats me 6 out of 10 times, right? So if it's got a collar, I'm twisting that thing and I'm trying to take the air out as quickly as possible.
And choking it would be the nicest thing you could do for that animal, right?
Sure.
Taken out of context, people are going to be like, oh my gosh, you said to choke the animal. That sounds horrible. Well, this animal's attacking him. Choking is probably the nicest thing you could do if it works, because it would end the fight without real damage being done to the dog. So without a doubt, that's, I think, the nicest option if you can make it happen.
And the alternative is knees to the chest, right? Like cracked ribs. So yeah, choking is definitely
where
the way
this
to go.
conversation's headed sounds very similar to Nelson, the video that you shared for this.
Yes.
Did you want us to play that?
Sure. Can you pull it up?
Yeah.
I'm excited. I've heard we've got a video. I have not seen it.
Oh, I'm so glad you haven't seen it.
Well,
So
I haven't seen it now. I don't know. I've watched a lot of dog attack videos over the year. Oh, wow.
Sure.
This is,
but
for
I
people
want
that aren't watching and are just listening, this says what to do when a dog attacks, and it looks like a pit attached to a cop's arm. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yep, it is. And then it's gonna break off of this and then go to somebody else who talks about what to do.
to a trainer, and I want you to react to this, Covey.
All right, you ready?
Yeah. Okay, so it is just hanging from his arm. He's got his arm up in the air, and the dog's attached to it. Now, okay, so he's on the ground. This is insane. I cannot, I know he's just reacting out of fear, but he was, so I don't have audio. Do we have audio?
Oh, you can't hear it?
No.
I can't hear it either.
But I can tell you, for everyone listening, he went to the ground with the dog and was basically like, it almost looked like sort of a chokehold, but his face was inches from the dog's face. So
I think he was trying to put his weight on the dog to stop it from moving, is
my
what I
first
think
thought
he was trying
if that
to do.
dog, you better hope that dog doesn't let go of your hand because your neck is right there. But can we try it again, Wlos, to hear the audio?
Yeah, I think I fixed it. Okay. So now he's going to tell you what he thinks that you should do in a situation like that.
This guy looks tough.
Like that, and you have a dog attached to your arm. I'm telling you right now, that is the best position for you to be in with a dog that's attacking you. And let me explain and show you why. Okay, now let's assume that this dog is attacking you. You know what I'm not going to do? This, okay? What I am going to do is I'm going to pull this dog close to my body and I'm going to lay back, because what I want to do is I want to squeeze his body and grab his neck, or if I'm able to, I'm going to put his neck in between my legs and then I'm going to squeeze his neck until he stops moving, period. I'm taking away the oxygen and I'm taking away the blood supply to the brain, period. There's no need to be playing around with these dogs, guys. If they come after your arm, you're still in a position to actually win. If I have a dog that's coming at me from the front and they're attached to my arm, guess what I'm going to do? The same damn thing. We're going to do it this way. And I'm going to lock his head right here. And I'm going to squeeze with every single thing that I have. Same thing with the body. I'm going to squeeze with everything that I have to make sure that he can't get another breath in. To be a leader, follow me.
To be a leader, follow me. Okay.
Wow. I've got a lot of thoughts. So that guy looks like he might be a badass. So that might work for him. So for people who weren't watching, watch the video. You need to see it, because he pulled this, like, he got a fake dog out and he's like on his back, like choking this dog, like jujitsu kind of stuff. Like,
and essentially
basically.
That's what it is, right? He's trying to lay on his back.
He did a rear naked choke for sure.
So here's, like, when I see that, what I think about is, you guys know, so I train in Krav. And Krav, one of the things that they're big on is having a technique that'll work for everybody. Man, woman, low training, high training, big, small, whatever. And as opposed to this technique that'll only work if you're really skilled and you truly know what you're doing and you're able to overpower. What I saw there was, like, if this guy's a true jiu-jitsu guy, yeah, I guess it would probably work. But man, getting on the ground with that dog and it, like, was pulling the dog's head close to your throat, that dog squeezes away from you and it latches onto your throat, you're dead. Like, just no question. A couple seconds of that dog on your throat and you're unconscious and then dead. Attached to your arm, you can make it a pretty long time, and hopefully you live in a place where police are present and can come and assist you.
Although he was a police officer, so.
The first guy, well, then back up, right? Like, to come over or pull out your sidearm or whatever. So, I mean, without a doubt, I would say that you're playing a dangerous game right there. So,
yeah. I feel like if you're a trained martial artist, you can probably do that.
Yeah, if you're a trained jiu-jitsu person, you probably don't need us to tell you what to do, right? If you're like, if this thing comes after me, I've been on the ground with enough tenacious humans. You know, I roll all the time, no problem, maybe. But for the average person, that's just not going to work. I can tell you what I would have done there. For that first video where that dog was attached to the cop's hand, I would have used my other hand and I would have done thumb in the eye, 100%. Thumb in the eye of the dog, without a doubt.
So what I would have done is had the baton, because he had a baton on his waist, and I would have started going to town on a pit who's not only grabbed my arm, but he's shaking, right? I mean, he's looking to do damage. So if I'm in that fight, I'm grabbing a baton, but I'm so glad that you had the exact same reaction that I had, which is this guy, you know, two things. So one, let's talk about this guy who does look like he's a badass. He looks like he, you know, does MMA kind of stuff. But I don't think people actually think about the difference in physiology between a human and dogs. And dogs are pretty streamlined, right? I mean, they're meant, the dog has the advantage in that situation as opposed to a human. And I don't know if he just doesn't realize that, or I'm assuming he's never fought a dog before. But he's a dog trainer, so presumably he might have done it at least once. But I think, and this is going to sound ruder than it has to be, but in America, where you know, like, we're so obese as a nation, it's like one of the big, you know, health crises of our time right now. Can you imagine the normal average Joe who might not even be obese, but just not work out, being able to have the leg strength to choke a dog out when they have the physiology, you know, everything? It's horrible advice. It's ridiculous advice.
And And that's kind of one of the things I was getting at, where like that guy looked tough, right?
Right.
He looked like he was in good shape, and different than the average person for sure. And I think advice that's geared towards 200-pound men that train in martial arts is not very helpful for the vast majority of people.
And going to get someone killed, right? Because if someone, and I like what you said, right? It is about skill, but the fact of the matter is that dogs are they're standing up. They're at the advantage. That dog is not going to be on his back for very long. He's going to twist around really quickly and be right side up again.
For
extremely
sure.
fast.
So I would say a big piece of advice, there's nothing that would make me consider going to the ground.
Absolutely nothing.
Stay
So that brings up sort of one of the more popular pieces of advice that you can find about when you're being bit, to get in the fetal position and protect your vital organs. And to me, I have sort of the same reaction to what you were saying for fighting the dog of, I don't want to get on the ground. I want to try and avoid being on the ground. I feel like I'd be way easier to be injured being on the ground.
I don't understand what is more protective of your vital organs than keeping them out of reach, right? Like if I'm standing up, my neck is nowhere near that dog. And really the only thing that could go wrong is if I try to karate kick and I throw a sideways kick and the dog takes me down, or the dog grabs my arm and pulls me down, right? But getting down on the ground is not the move.
I mean, I would do whatever I could to not get on the ground. And just so, like, let's think that through. That dog's attached to your hand. That obviously would hurt. It would be terrifying. But I would do everything I could to stay on my feet. And in some ways, you're honestly just like looking to buy time for someone to come and help you. And I'd be staying on my feet. Back to the pepper spray. If I had pepper spray in that scenario, it would be the pepper spray being emptied like into the dog's mouth, without a doubt. I would not go for the eyes. It would be right into the mouth to get them to cough and let go.
Oh, that's interesting. See, I would have gone straight for the eyes, so that's interesting. That's a good thought
and,
there.
You know, who knows what would happen in that scenario, right? But
sure.
I honestly think in a dog attack, that's the more realistic scenario, is that the dog is attached to you, your leg or your arm or something, by the time you get your pepper spray ready. And then you're like, now what? And I would not just empty that thing willy-nilly, because if the dog's pretty tenacious, there's a good chance they're not going to care about their eyes hurting.
Sure.
I mean, that was a pit, and that's, in that video. But any tough breed, they can ignore a lot of pain. So what I would want is to make it hard for them to breathe. So not eyes, trying to get nose or mouth.
Now, one big thing, and I ran into this when I ran into the video, right, is that the longer I had to sit with the information, I could Monday quarterback this thing all day, right? And so, the proper thing would have actually been to grab the baton and use it as a break stick to get the dog off of your arm, and no harm could have potentially come to either of you. And then, you already have your stick out, so you could bonk them if you have to, right? So, there's a lot of things that we could say, but let's be honest, all three of us have been in that situation, that exact situation. A tenacious dog, mine happened to be a pit, attached to the arm, right? And it hurts, but not so much that I couldn't think and thought, let me get down on the ground.
Well, let's expand there. And for sure agreed about the Monday morning quarterback, because it's much easier to watch and say, here's what I would have done. So dog attached to your arm, you're that guy, you have your baton. To strike that dog with the baton when it's attached to your arm is going to be hard, like to any powerful strike. Think about the leverage. How are you going to, the dog's attached, and hopefully it's attached to your bad hand versus your good hand, but it's close to your body.
Fair.
You're trying to hit it as it's attached to you as it's moving. Now, I'm not saying you can't do it, but it'd be harder than just just hit it and now it'll let you go. But you mentioned break stick. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So a break stick, I don't think that was an actual thing, right? People just grabbed whatever they could. Have you guys
video?
No. Just in general, when they talk about break stick, have you guys ever seen an actual thing?
You can buy a break stick. Yeah.
Okay. So what a break stick is some kind of reinforced pull. I've just seen people grab broomsticks and stuff like that, right? But it's essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to grab that stick, shove it into the mouth so that you can pry those jaws open and then get the dog off of your arm, essentially. And then if the dog bites the stick, like less of a problem, right? Maybe that's a good way for you to get away. But that's what, it's oftentimes for bully breeds, right? So bulldogs, pit bulls, Amstaffs, all of those. And you would take the stick, you would try and get it all the way through the mouth so that you can pry it open. At least it's the way I've seen it happen, at least.
Yeah. So for anyone watching, I just checked that Amazon sells break sticks, so you could just go to Amazon, type in break stick, and you'll see a lot of them almost look like a sword in the sense of they're flat and wide. And the idea is that you put it in flatwise and then you turn it. And so now, flatwise, that's not a word, but you put it in like the skinny way. And then as you rotate it, it pries the jaw apart. And in theory, enough to get your hand or the other dog's head or whatever, out of that dog's mouth. So if you walk with a break stick, that's a good option. Now, a break stick's only useful when it's already attached. So you're going to the hospital after you use, or your dog. Someone's going to the hospital if you're using a break stick. Mm-hmm. Better than losing a hand or dying, obviously, but a break stick is not a deterrent at all. And it means like that dog's probably getting euthanized for mauling someone and you're probably going to the ER afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But better than getting your hand chewed off.
Or getting pulled down to the ground, which would be my biggest worry. But what's crazy is the company, which I don't remember what the company is, but I wouldn't name it anyways. The company is one I've heard of before. And so it's just crazy that they're putting out videos of like, hey, the average person needs to be able to do this. And the average person doesn't even go to the gym, let alone train, right? I mean, there's a lot of skill in what he was doing there.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right. So we've talked a lot about true attack scenarios. Wlos, you look like you've got a thought.
I want to take, there's an attack scenario we haven't covered at all. And I want to talk about it a bit. It's something that I think happens to me. I don't want to say frequently, but it's a different scenario. So riding a bike and having a dog come after you. So I feel like it happens really commonly. We did that other podcast about how dogs love wheeled items, right? And bikes are one of them. And as a bike rider, it's scary having a dog chase after you. So average bike rider maxes out around 19 miles an hour. A lot of dogs can run up to 20 miles an hour. So they can catch you. So just like you were talking about with if you're out for a walk or you're running, the dog can catch you. So if you're on a bike, what do you end up doing? If you try and outrun it, there's a good chance they're going to get to you. Just to throw this out there, every time it's happened to me, I've outran the dog, which I'm not saying that's good advice, but that's what I've done is just sped up and just rode as hard as I could for as long as I could until the dog just stopped and disappeared.
Are you in the mindset when that happens to be able to switch gears?
Yeah, for sure. So like you mean change gears into a harder gear and ride faster? Yeah, without a doubt. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't ride much, you probably aren't in that mindset, right? Okay. But as somebody who rides semi-frequently, I think that comes pretty natural to you to like, as you continue to speed up, keep changing gears. So that's what I've always done. But if the dog keeps coming and is clearly going to catch you, the best advice I could come up with is get off of the bike, do it in a way that you're putting the bike in between yourself and the dog, and then use the bike as your thing to keep the dog off of you, almost like your stick or your weapon. So the dog's coming towards you, you're holding the bike out, try and get the dog to bite the wheels of the bike as opposed to you. And if the dog doesn't attack when you get off of the bike and is sort of like, oh, this isn't as exciting anymore because it's not moving fast, then, slowly walk off until the dog loses interest, and then you can get back on the bike and ride away. So biking and a dog attacking can be very dangerous. You're up higher. They can bite your bike. They can knock you down. Now you're on the ground. We talked about not wanting to be on the ground. So really dangerous situation, but I did want to talk about it a bit because it's a lot different from what we were talking about with walking.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm with you. If I was on a bike, I would go for running in a heart, like, outrunning the dog in a heartbeat. I like my odds in a bike versus on foot.
Yeah, I had a
Way more
German
so, for
Shepherd
sure.
chase me for probably half a mile once, and I stayed just in front of him the entire time, but it was unbelievably scary.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm. I would on a bike, and I agree 100%. If you realize you can't outrun it using the bike, and I guess this is a good time to talk about. We haven't said this specifically. I mentioned like a garbage can lid or something. Dogs bite the first thing that's in front of them. And like, although dogs are smart, when they're in fight mode, whatever's there, they bite. And if you see it, if you see a video and you think about it, it's kind of silly where like they'll grab whatever's there and they're shaking their head and whipping. As trainers, most trainers don't wear super tight pants when they're working with an aggressive dog. I prefer to wear cowboy boots because the reason being I don't like the traction of them a ton, but I like that they're tall enough and they're loose fitting around the ankle and calf. So if a dog bites that, they're grabbing onto your jeans and your boots and whipping their head on that, as opposed to grabbing like, your calf.
Skin. Yeah.
Yeah. So anything you can put in front of you. So it sounds silly if you've never seen a dog attack where Vlos says, put the bike in front of you because you're like, well, he doesn't want to get the bike. He would just come around it. He's going to try to go through it and he's going to grab that thing and bite it and shake his head and freak out. And there's a good chance, like a real chance, the dog kind of exhausts itself attacking that bike. And if you can keep the bike in front of it for long enough, there's a good chance you could get out of there safely.
There's also a good chance the bike is the thing the dog was after. Again, with the wheels being exciting. Like, I think there's a good chance they don't care about you. They're attacking this weird thing that is scary.
Yep, that's a really good point. So anything you can do to put in front of you and the dog, anything you can use as a weapon. I mentioned backpack earlier. And like I've heard people say sweatshirt. Yeah, if you have time to get your sweatshirt off, do it. I think it's unlikely, right? Like I said earlier, but if you've got a dog running from a long way off and you're in a field and you look and there's nowhere to go, then yeah, take your sweatshirt off and see if you can't get the dog to bite that. And I would use that as like, I would have it in front of me. I would probably two-hand it. And as the dog jumps up, use that for like, a target for it to bite onto.
And that's why I asked, right? Like in that situation, did he have the mind to be able to switch gears and stuff? Because if you're scared enough, you don't, right?
Yeah.
If you didn't prepare for a situation like that, you're not going to be thinking. You're just going to be, reacting.
There's two things with the after effects of an attack that I'd like to discuss, or at least hear what you guys think. So the first one is, a lot of kids and adults after getting attacked then have an irrational fear of dogs and being attacked again.
Sure.
What are some things that you think people could do to make sure that doesn't happen after getting attacked?
Like I have this saying, and this is not, mental advice, so I'm not a psychologist, but one of the big things that I tell everybody, because this could apply to kids or dogs, is if the last situation or the last interaction they had with a dog was negative, that's where they become more fearful and you really start getting into the traumatized type of situation. But if, let's say I had a dog that got jumped by a dog, but then I was able to get that dog around other nice dogs that it could play with, the chances of it being traumatized by dogs goes down dramatically because it also has good experiences afterwards. And the same thing with kids, when they're scared of dogs, whether they were bit or, one chased after them or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of scary situations, right? But getting that kid around other nice dogs, preferably calmer dogs, but just dogs in general, can really start to counteract the innate fear that you're going to have of whatever attacked you. It's like public speaking, right? Like if you only do it once, it sucks every time, right? But eventually you do it so often, it's not a thing.
Yeah. Covey, any other additional thoughts there?
Specifically towards people, like you got attacked, how do you keep from being fearful of a dog? What I've seen with people is sometimes they're then scared of that type of dog. So
Sure.
they're like, yeah, I'm fine with my like sister's golden. That doesn't scare me, but I'll never trust a pit again or a German Shepherd or a whatever. And if you really want to get past that, then it would be to go out there and meet nice dogs of that breed. And that happens to dogs too, right? Like how many times have you trained a dog where the person's like, he hates white fluffy dogs because he was attacked by whatever, a Pyrenees when he was young. And until you get closure, that dog might hate white fluffy dogs forever. And you need to make some white fluffy friends for him. Which is hard when you're working with a client and you're like, we can fix this. We need a lot of white fluffy dogs though. So get on your neighborhood page and find some white fluffy dogs to train with.
Figure out what's going on. Do you guys have neighborhood pages? I should look into that and see if there's a neighborhood page for where I'm at.
Yeah, there is. There's got to be.
For sure.
So do we want to move on to what if a dog hasn't attacked you yet?
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, there's so many stories we could share there. I mean, but I can tell you one. So have you guys ever seen the newer Jurassic Parks with Chris Pratt?
Mm-hmm.
Remember the scene when the Velociraptor goes, like the guy falls in the cage and Chris has to go in there with him? Owen Brady, I think is his name in the movie. And he uses strength, eye contact. He backs up, and then when he gets a chance, he dives into the gate and gets out of there.
I am so ecstatic and impressed that you know all of this information. But yes, I have seen that movie.
Oh, I love those movies. They're amazing.
Really?
Yeah. And Claire changed so much throughout the movies.
So much.
Like at first, she didn't even know how old her kids, not her niece and nephew were.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon she's raising a girl that's not even her child. Like, good for her.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, I watched that and I'm like, I've seen and been in situations, not with velociraptors for the record, but situations similar to that. So I can think of one. I went to look at an American Bulldog once, this was years ago, and it was a Johnson type. And I go in this backyard and the dog was up, like someone needed to take it, one of those scenarios. And I didn't know it was a Johnson. I thought it was a Scott. And I was like, no, I just like Scott type Bulldogs better, but whatever. So
he's like, no way, no more.
And the lady's like, it's, whatever, it's, here. So we go in the backyard and all of a sudden this dog comes around a corner and it's like, it probably weighs as much as I do, right? Just huge dog. And it comes walking to me. And as he's walking, his tail goes up and he's staring at me. And you can imagine how I felt, like terrified, right? Like I'm looking, I'm like, this dog, this is not good. Like, how did I let myself get in this situation? I'm smarter than this, but hindsight's 20/20. I didn't think the dog was loose in the yard, and I didn't expect it to be a junkyard Johnson Bulldog. So it comes walking to me, and everything I see about its posture makes me scared. So I did not start screaming at it. I did not charge it and kick it, because it had not decided to attack me. But everything said this is close to attacking me. Like this is not. There's no way I'm letting this dog get up and smell me. Like it's just not a chance. So I started backing up, but I am not going to turn my back. And this is crucial to people to think about. Do not turn your back. If that dog, most dogs prey upon weakness. You turn your back, you look very weak. So I started slowly backing up. And I was looking towards the dog, but not staring in his eye. I did not want to provoke him, but I also did not want to appear weak. So for me, it was kind of split the difference of I'm going to look that direction, but I'm certainly not staring him in the eye and like trying to challenge this dog. Because we get a lot of comments on YouTube on that video of like, staring is challenging. Like, yes, but if the dog's already attacked you, the challenge isn't even a word to use anymore. You're in a fight for your life.
The challenge was accepted already.
Exactly. This dog was, as it walked to me, I backed up and I tried to kind of back away at an angle and I got closer and closer to the gate. And then I felt behind me. I did not turn and look and I felt behind me until I could feel the gate. And as the dog was coming up closer and I was able to get the gate open. And when I felt that gate was open, I moved as quick as I possibly could. But I waited until I felt like I was going to be able to get through that gate. And I can't remember how close the dog was at that point. Way too close for comfort. I feel like he started 20 feet away. And when we ended, he was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 feet, but it felt even closer. And it was scary. And as soon as I got that chance, I was through the gate. I shut it. And the lady's like, don't worry, he's friendly. He does not look super friendly. And that's, that was how I played that situation. And maybe there's stuff I could have done differently, right? But felt like it worked out. And looking back, I don't have anything I would have done differently. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, if you just throw down some treats and show him that you love him, that everything would have been on the up and up. The fact that you were challenging is the wrong move.
And part of this is knowing dog body language, right? Like if the dog's tail is low and they're wagging their tail and approaching you, it's different. And if you don't know dog body language, I'd suggest listen or watch our body language episode. We talk a lot about stuff like this. But once if they show you with their body language that they're a tough, assertive dog who's feeling assertive right then, you need to watch out.
I think that's the thing to really kind of comment on, right? One, I probably would have tried to do the exact same thing. I don't know if I would have been as smooth as you, but I would have been trying to get away.
In my brain, remembering it was smooth. Who knows what it looked like in real life, right?
But the thing to remember is absolutely context matters, right? He felt assertive in that situation because I came into the yard. He has full access of me and I have no recourse in a good way to be able to kind of handle that situation. So, that's not to say that you couldn't take that dog for a walk and everything been fine, or if you had met at a park or something like that. I just feel like a lot of people really jump on the wrong details, right? And the details of this story are, in this situation, this is how he was feeling. It was smarter to get away. A lot of people will say, oh, well, it's just because it's an American Bulldog that you hate them, and that's why you felt this way. If it were a Chihuahua doing the exact same thing, you wouldn't have felt that way. And no, if a dog has its tail, straight up, chest out, staring, I'm going to feel the same way no matter what the dog is.
And what I would say to that, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, first off, I love American Bulldogs, but also that dog was big enough to kill me. A Chihuahua is not. So how much this dog weighed, I don't know, but certainly north of 120. But
average is like 150, right?
Yeah,
for a male?
And I'm just guessing. Obviously, I didn't stick around to try to get him on a scale. But that dog, like if we got into it, I don't know about my odds. Like if it decided to attack, my odds of surviving that I think are pretty low if there's no one to help out.
Right.
A Chihuahua, a little bit different. Like a Chihuahua it'd have to be a really bad day for a Chihuahua to kill a full-grown adult.
I'm sure it's happened somewhere, though.
Maybe it bites you, you end up getting an infection, and then...
Or you fell asleep on the couch, and your Chihuahua was like, today's the day.
Yep.
Today's the day, buddy.
So let's spend a little more time there on dogs that have not attacked, but are mean-mugging you, and you're thinking, like, I don't know what to do here. Because I've got some other things. There was one thing I could have done in that scenario that I didn't choose as an option because of the size of the dog. But anything else on your brain of what you could do?
I think the smartest thing is not presenting yourself as weak, and even retreating, it has to be done in a proper way, right? Again, I can slowly walk backwards while, presenting to the dog, because there's a lot of the times where the dogs are still making a decision of maybe I do want to try you, maybe I don't want to try you. Where if you turn around, like you said, then you've made the decision for them, right? They just go. But the other thing is we've seen a lot of this. This is a lesser type of situation, but we get it all the time from clients where it's like, wow, the dog is responding to you way differently than any other of my guests. And, I don't know what it is. And a lot of it is just I'm claiming my own space. I'm letting the dogs know that I need some space and they don't get to encroach. And that makes a difference to dogs. Now, sometimes with some dogs, yeah, that's a challenge and they'll be pissy, and we've had that happen as well. But again, I'm guaranteed to have a bad time if I try to turn and run away if I'm not that close to the gate, or I at least have a good shot to be able to, like think my way through if I present confidently to this dog.
And that's key. And I don't think I'd said that earlier. I mentioned backing up, but keeping your body basically square to the dog. You want to look as tough as you can, and you're not trying to start a fight at that point,
Right.
but you want to look tougher where the dog seems, they're questioning whether they want to attack you or not.
Because sometimes that's all it takes. For a lot of times, that's all it takes is, hey, that guy looks kind of tough. Maybe I'm not going to try it.
So the option I didn't go for there, you guys know this, but anytime I'm doing something with dogs that that's planned, not just like a random walk, but something like that, I'll have a leash with me, and I'll either wear it around my shoulders or maybe in my hand. And that gives you two options. Dog goes to attack. You could take the leash and offer it as a target. So you could hand to hand, and I'm talking about a nice thick leather leash. Or a lot of times I'll keep it already made into a slip lead. And if you don't know what I mean, just think about you take the leash and you put the clip end through the small loop on the hold end of the
hand loop.
Yep. And then now you make a slip lead, and I would hold it so that if the dog were to jump or get into attack mode, you could get it over the dog. And I was in a situation once where I was working at a kennel, and I heard commotion in the kennel room itself and screaming, a girl screaming. Then I ran in there, and there was a dog that was attacking her, and it was a good sized dog, and she was small, teenage girl that was working there. And it was it had already bit her pretty bad once and was jumping and biting. And I grabbed a cage and just slid it across the floor hard and pushed the dog against the wall at the cage, and had a leash over my shoulders. So then I took the leash off as I was kind of pinning the dog against the wall. It was probably, I don't know, 70, it was a lab pit mix, 70 pounds or something.
So decent size.
But different than 150, right? And then
Absolutely.
slip leaded. So made my leash into a slip lead and got it over the dog's head, and then was able to, for lack of a better word, somewhat string the dog up a little bit because it was still trying to attack at that point until it started to run out of breath a little bit and was pretty gassed, and then was able to put that dog into a run and slam the door shut. And so then the dog was not injured, and it was, I think, the safest way for the dog, but it's using the tools at your disposal. And that crate was basically what you said earlier, Vlos, about the bike.
Yep.
And it was something in between me and the dog for him to bite. And don't underestimate how useful it would be if you can get a dog on leash. But I would tell you, if you don't have a lot of dog experience, we're back to that advice the guy was given earlier. If you've never had an aggressive dog on leash before, it might not help you a lot to get it on leash.
Yeah, that's fair.
So just something to think about. But having the leash in your hand for something to bite is definitely a great option.
Or even, again, if I'm coming at this I have no experience, having to deal with an aggressive dog on a leash, but I have one. I mean, I'm whipping that clip around to make the noise. I'm slapping the ground with it. I mean, there's a lot of intimidation stuff that you can still do with the leash without ever having to actually make contact with the dog.
Sure.
So it's better than nothing.
Yep. What else do we have? We've been at this an hour. There's a lot of dog attack conversation going on here.
Time flies.
To me, the only thing we haven't talked about is calling the authorities. If you should call the authorities about a dog attack, how you feel about that?
You want to take this, Nelson, or you want me to?
I can take it. At least, I've changed quite a bit. I have used to be never go to the doctor, never call the cops, never do, don't get the authorities involved because you feel bad for the dog or you feel bad for the people or, whatever the case may be, right? I've since changed quite a bit, especially with this job, because just hearing the amount of dogs that we do a first house call with, and it's oh, this dog has bitten 3 people inside my house and has gotten out of my house 3 times. And I'm yeah, call the cops, dude. you know what? It's not worth risking yourself, risking your kids, risking other dogs.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that they understand that the situation is bad, but they don't make any moves to fix it. And I'm not going to risk myself for your lack of judgment.
Agreed. I
Yeah.
think if you get bit by a dog, you should absolutely be calling the authorities, get it recorded. You don't know the situation. You don't know if that dog, if it's bit 3 other people, if it hasn't. If it has bit 3 other people, right, there's protocols that they're putting that dog through. If it hasn't, now it's in the system and it's known that that dog has had issues. So
I
think
disagree
without a doubt, call.
so much.
Really?
Maybe you're phrased it differently than what you mean. Now, that dog that tried to attack us, we called 911 afterwards for sure. To me, I mean, that dog could kill a child, right?
Yeah.
Like that, they need to be involved. The police need to be involved, 100%. But I wouldn't draw the line at did the dog bite. To me, it's what's the scenario? If the dog is like loose on the street, what we're talking about today, like attacking people, yes, yeah, call the police. That's crazy. Like that, someone needs to do something. But if I'm training with a client and the dog has resource guarding and bites someone over a resource, there's not a chance I'm calling the police.
Agreed. So
that's
different
fair.
circumstances. I was
So-
talking about what we've been talking about so far.
Right.
So I just wanted to, I was figuring, so I just want to make that clarification. But yes, if strange dog attacking people on the street, I think calling 911 is 100. I think you're not a good citizen if you don't, right? Because I know you don't want that dog to get hurt, potentially, but if someone else is going to get killed or someone else's dog is going to get killed, you didn't save anybody by not calling 911.
So here's the situation I'll present to both of you. Now, I'm biased in the situation because I really like the family and I really like the dogs. But I was working with these dogs, 2 of them. And one was pretty sketchy with people coming over to the house and then barked out of the fence incessantly. To my knowledge, I don't think it's actually bitten anybody, but it's run and charged and jumped on people inside the house. Now, I remember with this situation, the dogs had gotten out, had run around the neighborhood apparently, more than once. So, that's points against them for sure. But every time that these dogs run around, they bypass every dog and every person. So they're just running free. There hasn't been any attacks or anything like that. Neighbors that have eventually called the cops said that nothing happened. The dogs ran right past them, had no interest in them whatsoever. Do you call the cops?
For what?
For the dog being loose. You're a neighbor. You're watering your lawn. You see these dogs running loose. You don't know anything about them, but they bypass you. They have no interest in you whatsoever. Do you call the cops?
So I wouldn't call the cops there. I mean, if they're just running loose and not really, I don't know, like you said, going after anybody or anything like that, I would be looking for the owners, right? To try and be like, hey, there's dogs loose, or trying to catch
coordinate
them. So
something.
I don't think I'd be thinking about calling the authorities in that situation. I'd be trying to do one of those 2 things.
Agreed. When the house that we currently live in, when we first moved here, within the first couple of days, a strange pit, kind of wandered into our yard. And so I caught it. It didn't seem like a bad dog, but I still didn't trust it. I don't know the dog. Got on a slip lead, no collar of any sort. So I got a dog crate out, put the dog in the crate, and I called animal control. So to me, that was the appropriate response. Now, could I have taken it to a vet to have them, check the microchip? Certainly, but my thought is animal control, that's their job, is to check the dog. And if there'd been a tag and I could have called the owner, then I would have called the owner and been like, hey, I got your dog. Here he is. He's in a crate. He's being well cared for. There was no tag of any sort. And the dog, I don't think it was a bad dog, but I wasn't about to let it, wander free if I could stop it because of that dog's safety, like getting hit by a car. For all I know, it's someone's beloved pet who's super friendly, or maybe he didn't have any issue with me, but he sees a strange, another dog and attacks it. I have no idea. So my thought would be, if you have enough dog skill to get the dog, being a good human means you should. and then, figure out what to do from there.
So neighbors had called the cops. It was a pretty nice neighborhood, so neighbors called the cops pretty quickly, and then the owners had gotten in trouble a couple of times, had to do a court appearance. That's
So a court appearance for a loose dog?
Yeah, but again, these dogs have gotten loose multiple times. So,
Weird.
and this was years and years and years
Yeah.
ago. Maybe there's a detail that I'm forgetting, but I do remember that they had court appearances and stuff like that. And that's a situation where I'd be like, there's no way I'm calling the cops, right? Like, the dog bypassed me, had no interest in me. So it's not, aggressive towards adults. Obviously, if I didn't have kids, I wouldn't know. But, that would be a situation where, right, I would try and find an owner or get on Facebook and like, hey, there's a loose dog. It looks like this, and I saw it over here. That kind of situation.
So, but a contrary opinion there is, when you call the cops, what's your purpose for calling, and what do you think is going to happen? And if my dogs were running loose and someone called the cops, I'd be pretty happy, right? Like, I wouldn't want my dogs to get hit by a car and die, or like get too far from home and not know their way back. So calling the cops is also you don't have to see it as like, I want that person to get a ticket. It can just be, I would gladly pay the ticket. I'd much rather pay a ticket and my dogs are brought back to me safe than not pay a ticket and maybe they're left out overnight and you can't find them.
Sure.
So
I think that's fair.
I don't know if I would think if I saw a dog run by my house, I doubt I'm calling the cops. But it's just something to think about, right? Is that calling is not necessarily a penalty.
There is a penalty. I mean, there is a ticket. I don't know.
I guess I shouldn't
know.
have said penalty. Calling it is not necessarily meant to be a bad thing.
Sure.
Right? Like, I want this person in trouble. It could also be, I'd like to make sure they're safe.
Yeah, and that's fair. I don't know how much that ticket is. Do you have any idea?
I would say it's so town specific. And I would think most towns, they're not going to give a ticket if the dog doesn't have a history of escaping
Right.
and like an accident, like the dogs get loose. So I can't imagine most towns would write someone a ticket for their dog accidentally got loose.
Agreed.
I agree. It was a frequent thing, which is probably why this family had the trouble that they did have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think after the third time, the police officers might be like, this doesn't seem like an accident. This seems like bad
This is
dog
getting a
owners."
little suspicious.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, did we cover it all? Are we done here?
That's all I got.
All right. I hope
Cool.
this was helpful to everybody listening. If you have questions, drop a comment. We would love to either reply or maybe cover it. If it's something too long to type, we can maybe cover it in a future episode.
Awesome. I'll see you guys.
Thanks for watching,
Thanks, everyone.
everybody.